Guts becoming an apostle are possibilities that are hinted at many times throughout the manga. We see it in the Lost Children arc, in Quillpoth, and that Guts is some kind of a monster in literal or a metaphorical sense is something talked about again in the Lost Children arc and throughout the story. But before we start figuring out if Guts can become an apostle, let's first understand what an apostle actually is. We have all seen them hack, slash, do absolutely inhumane evil acts as they bare their teeth from behind batshit insane eyes. But what exactly are they? By understanding what an apostle is, we may understand if Guts can actually become one. I want to discuss apostles along a couple of parameters: their psychology, pre and post becoming an apostle, and the intricacies of the magical ritual involved in making them. What is an apostle? An apostle is a true savage, coerced out of the depths of man via magic. Now, not all savages are the same. Zod, Locust, Grunwald, Irvine, for example, are some of the apostles with a more noble bent to the character, but in the end, they all share the same savagery. This is apparent in their behavior. They care for no morality, no humanity, they defile who and what they please, they hate and are hated. This is the most emblematic in the Apostle Wild or Wild, if you want to call him, whose human form and whose name signal a reversion to an earlier state of man, a savage state. In the pictures below, you can see a reconstructed head of the ancient Homo erectus besides a pic of Wild and see the uncanny resemblance between the two. He literally is wild. Psychology, pre and post the sacrifice ritual. Now Miura has drilled into us at this point that apostles are the end result of strong attachments and big egos. In Daiba's words, apostles are heresy to the world of man, infernal reincarnations via dark arts of those with extreme ego and desire. They despise and are despised, they ridicule and are ridiculed, they hate and are hated. And when this terrible combo encounters an unforgiving reality, the soul is cast in the black ink of endless despair. And in the words of the great Carl Jung, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And so the man at the bottom of despair says he will do anything to escape feeling this pain that is but himself. And to be freed of this pain that comes from a meaning crisis in the deepest part of themselves, they pawn off their soul for a false sense of escape. False because they are all destined for the abyss in the end. And so out pops a being that hates and delights in hating, defiling and violating life. To the point that one may even ask, what savagery and depravity have the apostles not yet touched? The false transcendence ritual, aka sacrifice or Apostlification. I don't hear it mentioned among the Berserk tubers because maybe it is thought of as already known, but Miura did give us an idea of what the details of the sacrifice ritual are. The first requirement is for the chosen one who has a behelit to be in the throes of despair, to be at the intersection where their highest love and their highest hate are directed at the same person or persons. This brings us to the next requirement. The individual or individuals that are the source of the hate and love of the chosen one need to be near them for the sacrifice to take place. You can't be somewhere too far away for the sacrifice to happen. Mostly because it looks like the victim of the sacrifice, one way or the other, ends up throwing the chosen one in a state of despair. With Void's sacrifice ritual, the details of which are not clear, we get the idea that the range for the sacrifice ritual can be very big. He apparently sacrificed Gaisric's entire capital. Now, the despair of the chosen one is a critical moment for manipulation, suggestion, illusions, and trickery to make this hatred of their love permanent. To coerce your soul into identifying with your worst aspects and then locking you into that state and making it all look like your own well thought out choice. Now, a good working definition for demon here would be a hater of the good because it is the good. So, With his love cut asunder, the man who can no longer love does the only thing he can: hate. Slugcount loved his wife and hated her for spitting on his religious beliefs by mingling with heretics and for the sheer depths of her depravity in her unfaithfulness towards him. Roshnu loved her parents but hated them for what her life had become and for violating her one refuge, the elven Misty Valley, with their hateful presence. Egg Apostle loved and hated the world that loved to deny him and hate him in return. Kanishka loved, dreaded, and hated his son, who tried to kill him and almost succeeded. And finally, Griffith loved and hated Guts and Saska and the Hawks. Again and again, this pattern is repeated in the sacrifice rituals. Next step after this decision to hate one's love is chanted in one's heart. The following happens as the one you hate and love is branded and your flesh and spirit is transformed. In Conrad's words, a fissure in your heart will open up into which evil will surge. You are branded with the mark of sacrifice in the invocation of doom ritual to make this hate permanent. A brand of sacrifice is the seal of permanence of this hatred branded onto the victim, but more importantly on the psychology of the one who will soon become a demon. It is a mark affixed in the spirit that this thing is to become this thing and it may not become something else anymore. You are making a deal you cannot back away from because you yourself will change fundamentally. You are condemning someone to hell that you can't undo. You are condemning yourself to hell too, and you can't undo it either. And so, a false transcendence is coerced out of your body and spirit through manipulation and magic when you are at your most vulnerable. And so out pops an apostle or a godhand member. Now, let's try and relate this with Guts and see if anything fits with this pattern. The pattern is as follows: possess a behelit, be in the throes of despair, proximity to potential sacrifices, subject to intense manipulation, the one you love and hate is branded, evil surging into your body, apostlification or godhandhood. Possessing a behelit. Guts has had a behelit with him ever since he got it from Vargas in the Black Swordsman arc. It originally belonged to the Slugcount, but mere possession by Guts itself does not mean chosen by fate. So whether that means it is now Guts's, we do not know. Despair. In the latest chapter, we see that Guts is in the throes of despair, enough to welcome death. Proximity to potential sacrifices. Saska is in Falconia. Shirky's spirit has gone to look for her. Fanis, Serpico, and Ishidoro are fighting trolls, so as of this moment, no one who is dear to Guts is near him. Manipulation. When Guts was in Quillpoth, Slan tried to convince him to use the behelit. She overwhelms him and is about to try to convince him when Skull Knight interferes, so her manipulation did not get much time to work its magic. Branding and apostlification. Since Slan could not convince Guts and was stopped by Skull Knight, the next step of branding and apostlification did not happen. But you know what did happen and has been happening for a while? Evil surging into Guts' body. Here's how. At the end of the Lost Children arc, the evil spirits of the night tell Guts that he has the stink of darkness very close to them. And while the encounter with Slan did not convince Guts to sacrifice, but the wound that she gave him on his chest did do something, whether intentionally or not. The wound that she gave him wasn't a normal wound, but a wound to his very spirit. Now, let's go once more to Conrad's words during Slugcount's failed sacrifice ritual and pay close attention to the word fissure here. Do you know what a fissure is and what it looks like? In geology, a fissure is a fracture or crack in rock along which there is a distinct separation. If a person's ethereal body, their spirit, is to be thought along those same geological terms, this right here would be a fissure right on the heart. So you know that thing that Godhand members deliberately do during the sacrifice ritual? It has been happening to Guts outside of it, and for a while now. Evil is surging inside him and is sword like crazy, and the higher and higher levels of apostles and magical beings and pagan gods and pseudo manifestations of Godhand he kills, the more the evil surges inside him and his sword becomes specialized at killing higher and higher levels of astral beings. The next factor here is that which prevented this fissure on his spirit from closing before Shirky could fix guts with Flora's elixir. I'm of course talking about the Berserker armor. Even though in the manga it is stated as surpassing the limits of the human body at the risk of your own life, the Berserker armor, to put it differently, allows you to temporarily mold from your human state to one that is more akin to that of an apostle and then go back, if you can, that is, to being a human. And if you look closely, you see mentioned that the armor grants such power by driving you with extremely violent emotions. The sacrifice ritual too is characterized by extreme emotions and immediately ends with transformation into a demon and extreme violence on the sacrifice. Now, the difference between the sacrifice ritual and Guts becoming the Berserker is that, for the most part, Guts voluntarily takes on madness. Not once, but many times over, as he is guided by a good psychologist in Shirky. While the candidates for becoming apostles and godhands go through that madness only once and forfeit their soul permanently, as they are misguided by a team of the most vile manipulators one could possibly assemble. The life of an apostle too is characterized by this torrent of extremely violent emotions and behavior towards others. One may only look at the acts of the apostles like Snake, Slug, Oroshnu, Ganishka, Vilad, or the behavior of them and their kin during the eclipse, where to them what was happening was a feast and not an absolute horror show. And if my comparison between the Berserker armor and the apostles seems way off mark, just consider Puck's own words when Guts first wears the armor. He sees Guts bite down on the appendages of one of the apostles. That Guts' fighting style is getting less and less human is remarked on by Ishidoro at this point. Puck then agrees with him, yeah, it's just like, as the fangs of one of the apostles is reflected in his eyes. Even though Puck does not finish his sentence, that visual depiction finishes it for us. Now, this comparing with apostles is done to the point that when Guts sees a reawakened Sasuke for the second time, she sees that he now has not the stink of the dark, evil, disembodied souls that we were told way back in the Lost Children arc, but the stink of apostles themselves. In the panel below, she sees Guts in the same tone as the apostles, colored in their colors, as if. Now, if we were to articulate this in the same way as the Godhand members would, we would say the same thing they said to Slug Count as they tempted him to sacrifice his daughter. That the vibrations of Guts' soul has shifted from resembling that of the evil spirits of darkness to that of the apostles. He is getting closer and closer to demon kind. In volume 24, Shirky points out to Guts that those that are branded become an offering to those of the darkness. These creatures of the darkness are the disembodied evil spirits of the night, the evil spirits of the abyss, the apostles, and the godhand. These are the demon kind that seek those that are branded and chant sacrifice as they see them. Guts' beast too is called the beast of darkness. In both those of the darkness and beast of darkness, the word of is used to show what the entity referred to belongs. So Guts' internal beast is clearly associated with demon kind. Now, it is subtle and perhaps I'm getting too interpretative here, but the beast too calls Sasuke, a branded one mind you, a sacrifice, and suggests to Guts the imagery of consuming and violating her so that he too can become like Griffith. Now that we have established to a degree that wearing the armor makes you apostle-like in your psychology and your soul, does that mean Guts can and will become an apostle? Well, yes and no, and here's the problem. The will of an apostle is subservient to the godhand. This is exemplified the most in Ganishka, who for all his might and magic can't even lift a finger against Griffith. In Ganishka and Griffith's own words, Ganishka, I am trembling. I, the ruler of the greatest empire of this world. Griffith, that's instinct. the instinct of one through whose veins flows the blood of the demon realm. Ganishka. What? What a comforting, refreshing voice. His mere presence here makes everything sufficient, yet at the same time, hunger and thirst. This sensation is maddening. So, even though he has a behelit and is in the same despair as someone who would normally become an apostle or a godhand, actually becoming one would prevent him from getting his goal of revenge on Griffith and the godhand. Even if Sislan appeared and coerced Guts to make a sacrifice, anything less than becoming a godhand member would mean losing the will to kill Griffith. And so, in here comes another option. But before we go there, let's understand something. Magic is not the sole domain of the godhand. Mages use it, elves use a form of it to heal and fly, but magic that warps the spirit and the flesh that does not originate with the godhand exclusively has been seen in the series. Slugcount warps the spirit and flesh of Zondark by granting him his daemon. Roshnu warped the spirit and flesh of the children of a village by transforming them into demonic elves. Egg Apostle transformed the flesh of Mosgus and his band of righteous torturers by granting their wish. All of them have used their abilities to warp the flesh and spirit of another. But if we want examples that are completely separate from that of the godhand, then the devouring of people and transforming them into its tentacles is one such flesh and soul warping magic that we have seen the sea god do. Ganishka, or should I say a Daiba, uses the man-made behelit to transform fetuses in both spirit and flesh into the Daka. The evil spirits of the night too are capable of this warping of the flesh. But none of those can compare to what Guts needs right now to defeat Griffith. What that something is, we don't know clearly except as vague hints by Skull Knight. To quote, "He now exists beyond the reason of the physical world, where no one in the mortal realm can threaten him. It would be akin to someone in a story challenging the one who wrote it. It cannot be done. To stand and confront the hawk, one must also exist outside the story." So let's discuss the two possibilities of Guts to defeat Griffith if he chooses an evil path. On his next encounter, which may be soon, Slan lets him sacrifice Griffith, which maybe he can do since A. He loves Griffith and hates him, B. Griffith's sacrifice ritual has not been completed as Guts and Saska still live. This allows for the exploitation of the same love-hate relationship in the other direction this time. The same relationship that allowed them to become a sacrifice in the first place. This time, pointed towards Griffith. Can a sacrifice who is not dead sacrifice the one who sacrificed them in return? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know all the rules that govern the ritual after all. And Slan was explicitly telling Guts to make a sacrifice, so there is more than enough reason to think that it is maybe possible. But Guts also has a considerable amount of malice towards the godhand, so will he like joining their ranks? Perhaps. Perhaps he could join them and kill all of them. You know, the thing Void is often accused of doing to the old godhands. The next option, the next godhand that can likely grant this wish of Guts without him becoming an apostle or a godhand is the Beast of Darkness. I call him a godhand because in the latest chapters we see him behave just like them. He makes a Faustian offer to Guts in the same manner they do, and offers to grant his wish to kill a god in exchange for a sacrifice. Is that delusion, manipulating Guts, sincerity, or sheer reckless madness on part of the beast? He says, "You want it, don't you? Power? You cannot deny me that brand limits you. You cannot deny me that flesh restrains you. Your flesh, your blood, the creaking of your bones, your pain, even your soul. Yield them to me, your all. If you do." Now, what do the Beast of Darkness's words mean here? I'm not exactly sure, but I will give you my most honest and speculative opinion about this. As Guts is right now, his psyche is splitting along two identities. One that is the protector of Saska, and one that wants to go off on a revenge spree, sever all his bonds and his humanity, that is the Beast of Darkness. If Guts yields to the Beast of Darkness, in my opinion, we won't just see his Black Swordsman personality come back, but we may see that personality in new flesh, the flesh of a creature that resembles an apostle but has no loyalty to Godhand. I say that because the beast of darkness's words about Guts' current flesh restraining him imply a capacity or a way for it to be transformed, a way that it knows. How exactly will the beast of darkness transform his flesh? I do not know. I can see him use the behelit, since it is a Chekhov's gun that has been locked and loaded since the first arc and waiting to be used. But seeing how it can limit his revenge by making his will subservient to Griffith and the Godhand, I can see him not use it as well. Now, this is highly speculative, but without using the behelit, the way it could go is as follows. If we get highly interpretative, we can say that the last time the Berserker armor was granted this wish of being yielded the wearer's flesh, their blood, the creaking of their bones, their pain, even their soul, was when Geisric died by bleeding out till his last drop of blood in the Berserk armor some 1000 years ago. Was that the end of Geisric and the start of his new identity as someone transformed and possessed by his own beast of darkness? That is, till Flora committed her taboo and saved the saner side of his psyche? Honestly, we don't know. And besides, that is a topic of speculation for another day. What I can say is that the situation inside Guts' psyche would flip, with the beast of darkness now being the Guts we see on the outside, and Guts that we know being locked within himself like the beast was. Repressing desires has consequences. Repressing a desire so intense that it might just be part of your will just lead to possession by it. I don't think there is any coming back if Guts becomes a Godhand member, an apostle, or whatever creature he becomes through the beast of darkness's plans. In Berserk, the physical warping of flesh, especially to such a degree, is permanent. There are some steps you just cannot walk back. So Berserk would likely not be the same if Guts left his humanity behind. Where Miura would have taken this, ultimately only he knew, and now supposedly Kojimori knows. I leave you with that for now. Till next time, fellow strugglers. If you like that, please like, share and subscribe.